So I keep seeing comments about this so-called Chinese long game, that China is playing the long game and China's patience will soon show all of us in the United States and the collective West. Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't buy this idea that China is playing some masterful long game, and it has become a kind of geopolitical cliche thrown at us whenever we talk about a statistic that paints China in a bad light. Oh, yeah, China may have done this very stupid thing, but just wait, they're playing the long game, as if the Chinese Communist Party is a bunch of wise old sages that know more about the world than we do while working off some mystical 500-year blueprint. But that narrative ignores the reality of China's structural problems, self inflicted policy wounds, and the geopolitical pushback it's already facing. Whether Beijing is thinking 5 years, 50 years, 500 years out, the foundations just aren't there to catch up to the United States. Let's start with this myth of unstoppable growth. China's economic miracle, the double digit GDP expansion of the 2000s, is long gone. The country is now dealing with a demographic collapse. The working age population is shrinking, birth rates are at historic lows. By 2050, over 30% of China's population will be over 60. By 2100, China's population will be half the size it is now. No country in history has gotten rich after growing old and cutting itself in half due to limiting births for 44 years. On top of that, its economy is drowning in debt with a 290% debt to GDP ratio. Developers like Evergrande and Country Garden are imploding. Local governments are holding over 10 trillion in liabilities. China's old growth model, build up infrastructure no matter if it's needed or not, flood the credit system, export cheap goods, it's spent. There's no further future in that for China. And as such, productivity has stalled. China's total factor productivity growth has collapsed from an average of 3.5% in the 2000s to around 1.1% in the 2010s, and then it turned negative in 2022 and has stayed negative since then, despite trillions of dollars in government investment. This is clear evidence that its growth model is no longer delivering efficiency gains. Meanwhile, the US averaged 1.3% every year since 2000. It's not going to blow your socks off, but it's steady, and it's now outpacing China. And despite the self-reliance rhetoric, China is still far behind in core technologies like semiconductors, with no realistic path to catching up, while its top talent keeps leaving China for the West. The model of stealing the technology from inventor countries perpetually keeps them behind the power curve. Geopolitically, the idea that China is quietly expanding influence while the West flounders is just not grounded in reality. China's aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy, which they have largely abandoned as a failure, its economic coercion, and its predatory lending through the Belt and Road Initiative have pushed countries away, not pulled them closer, and BRICS is still a nothing burger that even Xi Jinping didn't attend this year. Australia, the European Union, and many other parts of Asia are actively scaling back dependencies and diversifying supply chains. The European Union has scaled back imports by nearly 5% since 2023, and they scaled back exports by 12.5%. Militarily, the region is closing ranks and frankly sick of China. Currently, China has land disputes with the following countries it borders: India, Bhutan, Nepal, Vietnam, and Myanmar. They have additional maritime disputes with Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. That is not the long game. That is antagonism. On the other hand, the U.S. has solidified defense ties through AUKUS, the Quad, and new base agreements with the Philippines. Japan is rearming. India's growing resistance on the Himalayan border is another check on Beijing. Meanwhile, the U.S. is systematically cutting China off from advanced semiconductor tools, and allies like the Netherlands and Japan are helping enforce that tech wall. China can make older chips, sure, but it's getting locked out of the future. And its closest partners, if we can kind of call them that, are Russia, North Korea, and Iran, countries that are more of a liability than a strength. The US has 7 formal mutual defense treaties that cover 36 countries. China has 1 defense treaty with North Korea. That's it. Internally, authoritarian fragility is working against the long game narrative as well. Xi Jinping has stacked the system with loyalists. He has silenced dissent and limited the CCP's ability to correct course. The result is decision paralysis and delayed responses to major issues like COVID, the real estate collapse, and soaring youth unemployment that is sitting at 18%, which is double that of the US. Civil society is being crushed, universities are censored, entrepreneurs are jailed. There's no breathing room for innovation or independent problem solving in China. The only thing propping up the Chinese Communist Party was its continued material progress, And now that's even in question. This is causing protests, which happened during COVID and again during bank failures. And that was just a glimpse of what was happening when people stopped believing in the Chinese Communist Party's trade off. Meanwhile, the United States doesn't actually even have to wait China out. It just has to keep being the US because it has a growing population, an immigration driven talent pool that will likely survive Trump, and it leads the world in innovation through AI, biotech, aerospace. Combine us with Canada, and we're energy independent. And it's a fortress. We are a fortress. The United States, Canada, pretty much the whole Western Hemisphere is a fortress that the United States still manages. And around the world, people still want to live in the US. They want to study in the US and they want to work here. Even the Chinese do. That kind of appeal, that soft power, can't be copied by the Chinese. China's so-called long game isn't a winning hand if the clock is ticking against you. And in China's case, it definitely is. The US is still the world's most dynamic, adaptive power, and that is despite the frustration of our current politics. So I do not buy into this narrative of China playing the long game, because it's actually playing catch up with bad cards and no ability to reshuffle the deck because of bad policies they've made over the last 50 years.